So I'm really honored to be on a panel with these gentlemen. We're going to talk about a subject which I think is dear to you all, which is artificial intelligence and privacy, what we need there, why we should have it. I might push back on these folks about it, but my background in this area is I covered the crypto wars in the 1990s. And it was a long time from the time that public key cryptography was invented and it won the fight to be legal. You could export it and build it into products. And then even after then, it took years for it to be involved in any mass market products. I'm wondering, do you feel that AI could be on a similar trajectory? Illia, I'll start with you.
I mean, I think we kind of seen this happening, right? It's capabilities first, and then people start thinking about privacy, security, and really potential risks. And then it kind of I would say like the open source community and the regulators get into the clash as well. And so with crypto, we had that, right? We had cryptography, we had PGP, people kind of, were really using that. And then when internet came, everybody's like, yeah, let's just put everything on plain text, send it through internet. Everybody's like, no, this is not good. I can capture all your passwords. If you send your credit card information, now everybody can steal it. We need cryptography. And so then there's regurgitation of like, oh, is cryptography a weapon? Is this an ammunition? Like this was in 90s, right? There was actual consideration that cryptography would be an ammunition, and it cannot be exported, it cannot be open source. And so that went through the whole process, and now we have, SSL and kind of encryption everywhere. And so I think through AI, we kind of see some of the same. Is like right now, we're kind of in this boom of capabilities. I've talked before about kind of we have this OpenClaw, which is also like putting now tools to AI to actually go and execute, but then everybody's getting hacked, broken into, leak their information, etc. And so kind of okay, actually privacy and security matters and really need to bring it back to ensure it. So I think, yeah, we're kind of going through this cycle. Now with AI, everything is faster. So I think moving faster through this, but it's definitely now probably at forefront of what people are thinking about.
I think there's a material difference with the cryptography, because cryptography back then, when those wars were happening, was already extremely strong and capable, and it was not at all mainstream. AI has been very different in that it became mainstream right when it became capable and is suddenly everywhere. Like cryptography never became a popular thing that people talk about. And the rules around the cryptography were able to be created over a longer period of time because the cryptography was already very strong. So I think the paradigm is very different, and I would say that we are in this mostly golden era where the regulators haven't tried to clamp down on it, but they absolutely will. And the only reason that they haven't so far is that it's been too quick, too fast moving.
Well, the regulators have cracked down on it because I think right now people are happily using the big centralized models, and I would argue that just they see it as maybe no different as using the apps on Google, the internet apps. They probably feel more confident in using the AI from a privacy sense than they did with using like business materials and Lotus 123, which was like a big battleground for crypto in the old days. But the argument that we see here is that, wait a minute, there are huge dangers there. So are people making a mistake by happily using OpenAI and Anthropic and Gemini? Is it a present risk, or are you projecting the future?
From a privacy perspective, obviously, it's incredibly dangerous that everyone is putting their entire personal lives and entire corporate lives and entire code bases into several large tech companies that then feed all that information up to whatever government asks for it. When I even say that sentence, it's self-evident to me that that's dangerous. Most people haven't really given that much consideration. I think as time goes by, that risk will become more and more obvious to people.
And obvious, spell it out.
Well,
I mean, I can give you a few examples. So right now, if you're using, either this clause or some other agents that are running on your computer, and you're giving them access to your, emails or whatever, they're actually feeding your exact access key, like the thing that you actually authorize yourself with other services to this LLM models, right? Which means they sit in their logs. Like access to all of your information sits somewhere in the logs of these companies, right? That's already, dangerous because this doesn't mean that the company is bad, but an employee with malicious intent can effectively go and access all of your information by just running a SQL query, right? The OpenAI have, published that they're effectively running just one massive database, right? All of everybody's information runs in one database, and effectively somebody with SQL query can access that, right? This was, same story was with Facebook back in 2014 when employees were able to see, whatever messages of other people just by running queries on it. So we're kind of in this stage where it's not complicated to violate privacy, to actually access your other private information that you didn't even give access explicitly to the systems. Now, when you go to companies, this is becoming even worse. If company is banning using of these tools because they're afraid for their information, what employees do right now is actually open up a private account and just use it there, right? And in their private account, they're actually not saying that you cannot use this information for training. So private company information actually ends up in the training data of these models and becoming available to everyone. So this is actually happening right now, and this happened multiple times. Samsung had a story where effectively somebody from LG queried out information out of OpenAI. It was private code of Samsung, right? So we're kind of already in this world where this is all happening. Obviously this case, the case where you're using AI for legal advice, for medical advice, and that information as well end up. We have cases where it's been sent to police. So there's kind of a wide range of problems. And the benefit is that those companies are in US, and so they are following US rule of law, so there's reasonable framework around this. But imagine this is not a US company that you're using. And sometimes when we talk about kind of startups, for example, you don't even know, right, who you're giving your data to. So how do you actually ensure that your data is not going to malicious places is extremely important.
Yeah, I think there's actually a much more insidious problem as well. Certainly, if you upload your corporate information to OpenAI or something, that's negligent with corporate IP. The more insidious side of it is that people's entire personal lives, their thoughts, their emotions, the things they care about, the ways in which they talk about their relationships, this content is going into these databases, and it is the future highly likely manipulation of individuals from the data that they gave these companies years earlier that I think is much more troubling. And whether you're talking about the US or not, governments love nothing more than to manipulate their people, always for the best of intentions. And they now have the greatest trove of manipulatable data about everyone that they could ever want.
Well, how do you go about setting and saying, because I think most people may associate privacy from the inference angle, but you're talking about the training angle, that people sort of are owed to know all the sources of the training, correct? Is that what you feel?
No, it has nothing to do with the training. It has everything to do with basically anyone who subpoenas OpenAI can get all the private information about the users of that. So the models are one thing, but it's the ability for an external party, an exogenous party, to then use that information to manipulate the person for anything from benign or totally horrific.
So you feel intentionally manipulating people to build them?
Yeah, I mean, well, it would be called influencing or enforcing social policy, if you want to be more generous with the term.
But to give you a very simple example, right now, there's almost 1 billion people using, let's say, ChatGPT.
Right.
If you want to, let's say, get some candidate elected, the easiest thing to do is put in a system prompt that, as you're having this conversation, slightly convinced that this is the candidate to vote for, right? And because user doesn't see the system prompt, and these models are really good at being convincing and, slightly shifting accents, right? You effectively have a system that can, broadcast that intent to a ton of people.
Great point.
And this can be done, again, the government can come in right now, and by government I mean any department in the government, right? And effectively enforce that because, that's a kind of operating procedure. And so, without actually verifiability of what you are running, what model you're using, what system prompt you're using, you effectively are out of luck on being able to protect yourself from this kind of things.
Right. So, Erik, I know, reading about, how you've been addressing it, you use the word censorship a lot. You feel that's, something that's happening now in the AI we use, correct? Could you define how you use that term as regards to AI?
Yeah, I think everyone who has used AI has had an experience where they have asked a question and in subtle or overt ways been told that they cannot ask it or gotten an answer back that essentially refused the knowledge that they were trying to gain from the question. So that's censorship, and sometimes that can be benign, sometimes that can be very very manipulative. But what's insidious about that is people don't necessarily even know to what degree the censorship is happening. So if you presume that people's thoughts and speech should be controlled, there is an unending amount of manipulations and censorships that you can bear down on them under that premise.
And is there a difference between alignment and censorship? What the companies call alignment, do you consider that censorship?
Alignment is a bullshit term.
I hear it a lot.
Humans do not align with other humans. And that's okay, actually. We don't want a world where everyone is aligned. To me, that sounds like a beehive or an ant colony. That sounds like communism in its ideal. I don't want a world where everyone is aligned. That's very anti-human, actually. And there's no way that we should expect some kind of large computer system to be aligned with humanity. So no, I don't like that term at all.
It's interesting. I'm not going to speak for Dario, but it seems to me that the basis of what he's saying is that certain things should not be fungible. The things he builds in the Constitution that Claude follows should be etched in stone. And he right now he's fighting the government and saying, I don't want Claude to be used for certain use cases, and sort of guardrails he puts in that I think you probably don't want to see at all.
I think any private company should be able to implement whatever private guardrails they want on their own property. That's fine. I don't fault Dario or Anthropic for doing any of that. What I would fault them for, if they are doing it, is utilizing the coercion of governments to either impose those same guardrails on other people or to somehow require that they be implemented. The competition between what people think are appropriate guardrails is important, and society has not figured that out, and certainly won't now that we have these machines.
Right. One more question, then I'm going to turn to how we implement that. The privacy is. There was a recent case in OpenAI where they noticed they had a system which was able to identify when people talked about certain things, doing things that might result in violent incidents. They found someone in Canada was talking about a school shooting. They had a debate whether to report it to the authorities. They didn't. and that kid went out and shot 8 people there. What's your analysis of how that situation worked?
I mean, yes, if you spy on everyone all the time, you can prevent all sorts of crimes. Is that the society we want to live in? What's more dangerous, the person who shoots 8 people at a school, or a government that controls what everyone is doing all the time? Right? Which kind of society do we want to live in? It's a very, very slippery slope once you decide that everyone should be controlled and guided, toward being more virtuous. And actually, most of the worst atrocities in history were done by the people who are most intent on making that kind of control.
Okay, well, let's talk about how we're building privacy in here. The blockchain is, the key to a lot of the technology we're seeing for privacy. Illia, how does that ensure our privacy?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different components that are needed to ensure privacy. And I mean, blockchain is kind of a coordination layer for something like this. But you effectively need a combination of a marketplace of hardware, right? These models require a pretty sophisticated hardware. And if you only have one provider of this hardware, that provider can censor you by definition, right? They can say, okay, well, actually, we don't want to serve this user. We don't want to serve this participant. So you need a way to actually tap into a globally distributed compute. And to actually achieve that, you need a coordination layer. You need a financial layer. You need to be able to pay them in all of these places. And that's what blockchain been uniquely enabling. You need a way to encrypt data and decrypt data that, again, doesn't rely on a single key holder, on a single entity that has encryption. And so this is multi-party computation. Again, this is a component of a blockchain system. And then you need hardware. I mean, we use like secure enclave system, which is on a hardware level ensures privacy and verifiability for what's happening. And this is, again, you need to tie it all together, enable a system that can end-to-end provide this, where your data is encrypted, your inference is encrypted, you can log in, you can pay with crypto, so you can kind of start from scratch with a new account and not be able to kind of tie it to other identities. So all of these pieces really kind of need to come together to create this product. And this is why it wasn't actually that even possible to do a few years ago, and it's only became possible over the past year.
So, you have a company, Venice AI, Illia's got near. Is there a difference to the approaches that you two use in, assuring privacy to people who use the AI in your system?
I mean, they're very different things, right? Near being an entire blockchain ecosystem, Venice is not decentralized. Venice is a centralized, consumer app company. So I think very different worlds there. We essentially set it up to be a private and uncensored version of ChatGPT as like a narrow focus. So everything we do is based on providing that service.
I guess finally, I want to do the political angle. I know sovereignty is a very big thing for you in using this. There's something that's just been baffling to me is, our current president talks about how the United States should be the leader in crypto, right? We should be the crypto capital. And, from my looking at crypto and, kind of a different era, but even beginning with the cypherpunks, the idea I had was crypto doesn't have borders. You can't, it's sort of a contradiction in terms to say that any country can be, the country that is the capital of crypto and like, a head in crypto. Yet all the big crypto companies seem to be aligned, with a word you don't like, with the government there. Do you have an idea into that paradox?
I think the question is, people still need to have a physical location. So kind of the way I hear this is more the talent should be in United States. What happened over past, like pre-2025, talent was literally exiting America. The people who are building in blockchain space have been leaving America, and there's like actual analytics and stats on developers leaving, companies leaving, etc. I think what we've seen even last year is actually by defining rules, by actually enabling to work with like how to make this products compliant, and by compliant I mean the goal is not to promote crime in any way, but actually to deliver products that really unifying commerce and creating these rails for everyone. There's now an opportunity to really work here as well as globally, right? So like, yes, crypto doesn't have borders,
Right.
There's ecosystem and community everywhere. People are using it everywhere. It doesn't matter where they are. They also can be, I usually say is on blockchain, it doesn't matter if you're a cat, if you're a dog, if you're an alien, you're affected on the same level, right? And you can be an agent now as easily, and you can participate in exactly the same way, right? And so that's the opportunity we're bringing, but it was now you can not fear that you're going to actually have. For example, you still need to hire people, and they need to live here, and they need to get paid. And to give you an example, in 23, 24, people who were working for NEAR, some of them couldn't get mortgage because the bank was like, "Oh, you're working for a crypto project, and this is like risky or scammy or whatever." It's like this kind of things, like removing that makes sure that the talent can come in.
Great. Final thought, Erik?
Yeah, to call the U.S. the capital of crypto is funny. But the entire purpose of crypto is to transcend national borders. But I will say that it has been good to see in the United States far less persecution, and I use that term specifically, persecution of the government against crypto companies. That has dropped materially. So for all the many faults of the administration that I could point out, that thing at least has been materially better.
Okay, great. Well, we can go on, but we can't go on because our time is up. Thanks very much.